Sunday Evening News now on BBC One with Clive Murray.
Boris Johnson defends writing an article backing EU membership 2 days before joining the Leave campaign. The Foreign Secretary says penning the arguments on both sides helped clear his thoughts.
Everyone's trying to make up their minds about whether or not to leave the European Union, and it is perfectly true that back in February I was wrestling with it like I think a lot of people in this country.
As tensions rise at the jungle camp in Calais, we hear from the children stranded there and hoping to come to Britain. A former member of the SAS who says he shot dead wounded enemy soldiers in Iraq faces an investigation.
Murray wins.
And Andy Murray takes another step to becoming world #1 with victory in Shanghai. A very good evening to you. The Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, who led the campaign to leave the European Union, has defended writing a newspaper article in favour of the EU just 2 days before backing the Leave campaign. In the draft, which wasn't published, he warned of the economic and constitutional risks of Brexit. Mr Johnson now says he wrote the article and another in favour of leaving the EU in order to clarify his thoughts. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth has the story.
June the 24th, the Independence Day for Britain.
His decision to back Brexit was credited with giving the Leave campaign the boost it needed to win. But it's well known Boris Johnson had wavered over which side to support.
You'll be coming out on June the 23rd? Yeah.
Now an article, never meant to be published, has surfaced in which he made the case for Remain.
Are you embarrassed by this article?
Today, the now Foreign Secretary explained why he'd penned it.
Everyone's trying to make up their minds about whether or not to leave the European Union, and it is perfectly true that back in February I was wrestling with it like I think a lot of people in this country, and I wrote a long piece which came down overwhelmingly in favour of leaving. I then thought I'd better see if I can make the alternative case to myself.
In the article, revealed today by the Sunday Times, Boris Johnson suggested Brexit could lead to an economic shock or the breakup of the UK. And he said access to the single market came with just a small membership fee, directly contradicting his comments on the campaign trail.
I've been listening to businesses large and small up and down our country over the last few months, and I've been amazed how many passionately want to come out of the single market.
Are you saying there would be no reaction on that?
I think it might be a very positive reaction. If we vote leave on June the 23rd, I believe we will galvanise this country, our economy and our democracy.
Today Boris Johnson said considering both sides of the debate only convinced him to back Brexit.
I set them side by side and it was blindingly obvious what the right thing to do was, and I think the people made the right decision.
Now, as Foreign Secretary, he's part of a government that has to negotiate Brexit, and for some, his early indecisiveness reflects bigger questions about what it will really mean.
It plays into the divisions that exist currently in the British government between the Brexiteers and the Remainers, between people on the Brexit side who want a sort of outward-looking approach to the world and those that want to cut off links to the continent. What was going on in Boris Johnson's head that weekend is what's still going on in the British government now.
And decisions are no longer about which campaign to back, but what the country's future will look like.
And Alex is here with me now. We've had the Brexit vote, Alex. The UK is leaving the EU. Why does what Boris Johnson wrote months ago matter now?
Well, we knew that Boris Johnson was torn over the referendum. This is really just more insight into his thinking. And even when making the case for Remain, he did so with a fairly Eurosceptic tone. The reason this matters is because right now the government is trying to crystallise its position on Brexit, work out how important things like access to the single market is versus controlling immigration. And in some ways, the choices that Boris Johnson was wrestling with reflect the choices that the government is wrestling with. Theresa May has repeatedly said Brexit means Brexit, but she's coming under some pressure to spell out what that really means. MPs from several parties again today saying they should have the chance to vote on this in Parliament before the formal negotiations start. Now, the government's repeatedly said there will be the chance for scrutiny and debate, but they can't show their hand, they can't give a running commentary, they have a mandate and they will get the best Brexit deal possible. But in the same way that Boris Johnson's position is now clear, there is somewhat of a clamour for that kind of clarity from the government.
Okay, Alex, many thanks. Alex Forsyth. The Ministry of Defence says it's looking into claims by a former SAS soldier that he shot dead severely injured enemy troops during the Iraq War in 2003. Colin McLaughlin has written in a new book that he acted to end the soldiers' suffering. Here's Richard Campbell.
More than a decade on from the British military intervention in Iraq, and yet more anguished questions about what was done in Britain's name to be emerging. Colin McLaughlin was then a sergeant in the SAS, but since has emerged from the shadows to take part in a TV series about Special Forces training. But it seems his contribution to a chapter in a new book about the SAS could now lead to fresh controversy about how soldiers behave in combat. Back in 2003, in the early days of the Iraq War, the former sergeant is quoted as saying he took part in the killing of 3 Iraqi army soldiers who apparently were dying from gruesome injuries after being ambushed. He is also quoted as saying, "I didn't enjoy killing those soldiers at the checkpoint, but I had to put them out of their misery." After